Hi everyone, welcome to the visual guide for the Heart of the Creator Savage, also known as A11S. You may find yourself going forward and back chasing victory here, but this boss is cruising for some bruising. Keep him in your sights and he'll reach his limit and be cut down in no time. My name is Ms. Tech and I'll be your raid guide. We begin by pulling Cruise Chaser into the center of the platform. Everyone will need to watch out for either left or right laser swords. This is a 180-degree attack on either his left or right side. Players will have to move to the other side of him to avoid high damage and debuffs. Up next, you'll see Optical Sight. This cast acts as a tell to indicate what pattern of abilities you'll see next. Essentially, each pattern involves players dodging Hawk Blaster AoE attacks. The first type of tell involves two big orbs spawning around the boss. This tell indicates that the very center of the room will be hit by Hawk Blaster. All players must move to the outer edges of the platform to avoid high damage and debuffs. The second pattern involves a number of small orbs spawning around the boss in perfect alignment. This indicates that random players will be targeted for Hawk Blaster. As this attack is not telegraphed in any way, players will have to stack in an area to bait that Hawk Blaster, then run away to dodge it. The last pattern involves a number of small orbs spawning in an uneven pattern around the boss. This indicates the Hawk Blasters will follow a SHIVA style pattern with sets of two AoEs blasting around the room in a clockwise motion before one final blast in the very center. To successfully dodge this, players will wait in the center and then enter the zones left behind the first two blaster AoEs to dodge the middle attack. These three patterns will be repeated throughout the encounter with a few twists here and there. As long as you understand the basic tells and the respective movement, you'll be golden. Eventually, the boss will spawn an ad that will be picked up by the off tank. This ad is wearing an armored pauldron that can be destroyed to interrupt his overboost cast. If allowed to cast, this buff will severely increase his damage done. Destroy the pauldron, then destroy the ad as quickly as possible. During this time, the boss casts Spin Crusher, a fixed frontal cleave that should be dodged by anyone in front of the boss. Next, Whirlwind is a raid-wide AoE blast. Healers will need to be ready for shields and heals. Another Optical Sight will cast. Look out for that orb pattern and then move appropriately. This third Optical Sight introduces Super Hawk Blasters on random players. These players will be marked by these large green circles and targeted for additional damage right after the Optical Sight pattern. This damage also places a magic vulnerability up debuff on affected players. As such, these players will have to make sure they're not overlapping one another. This phase will continue until the boss reaches around 75%. At this point, he will cast his first limit cut. This cast will render him invulnerable, add a damage up buff, and lead into a specific combo of mechanics. This first combo involves all players being marked up from 1 to 8, with odd numbers as blue markers and even numbers as red. Players will have to pair up in order to handle the next set of attacks. Each odd number player will be targeted for a frontal cone, while each even number player will be targeted for a line charge from the position of their partner through them. To handle this, we have players positioned in very specific orders around assigned waymarks. The odd player will stand at the waymark facing outwards, with their even-numbered partner facing them right behind them or beside them, whichever way you want the boss to go. The next pair of players will be doing the same thing at the other waymark, while the remaining 4 players are waiting their turn. The boss will appear behind the odd player in the first pair and begin the combo attack, then fly away and target the next 2. During this time, players 5 to 8 can get ready to enter the same position. Once all 4 combos are out, Cruise Chaser will return to the center and the fight continues. Here he'll cast Photon, an AoE blast that will bring specific players down to critical HP levels. Each Photon cast follows a set pattern of affected players, so everyone can learn to anticipate this damage and react accordingly. Whirlwind will cast next and players should be topped off to survive the blast. Another laser sword to dodge, and then the boss will cast Blast Off, knocking back players and opening up ducts. Players will have to quickly click on these ducts to be thrown onto the boss's back. Any player left on the platform will die. The boss will blast the platform, destroying it. It will reform with a few changes. Players will then need to dismount to return to the platform. You'll now notice a rim of electricity running around the edge. Avoid this as necessary. As soon as the boss returns to the platform, he will cast Limit Cut, gain another damage buff up, and become invulnerable again. At this point, 4 LAPIS LAZULI will spawn around the platform. These must be destroyed before the boss casts Eternal Darkness, or you will die. While the raid is focusing these orbs down, the boss will continue with his regular attacks. Laser X Sword is a tank buster that must be shared between both tanks with cooldowns. This can also be soloed by a tank with immunities. Players will also be tethered to these green AETHEROPLASM orbs that will spawn and follow them. The longer it takes to reach their player, the less damage they'll do on impact. Once they reach their tethered player, they will explode and place down an AoE bubble. This bubble does no damage, but will explode and wipe the raid if another bubble is placed on top of it. As such, tethered players will have have to ensure their orbs are dropped in appropriate places. Assign players specific areas to drop off their orbs if necessary. Small assault cannons will also spawn around the room at this time and throw out long column AoEs. Avoid these as necessary. Once time is up or you kill all the LAPIS LAZULI, the boss will cast Eternal Darkness. This will do moderate to high damage and place a PYRETIC debuff on all players. Any movement or damage done with this debuff will hit the player for around 500 damage. While this is incidental damage, it can be very dangerous after specific mechanics, so all players need to be careful if their HP is low. PYRETIC will last until the next blast off and active time maneuver at around 45%. Mechanics will repeat here with another Whirlwind, a Spin Crusher, and another Optical Sight. In this Optical Sight, 4 players will be marked for Super Hawk Blaster, spread out as necessary. Photon is next, and the affected players will have to be especially careful not to kill themselves with PYRETIC. Another Tank Buster, and then the next Ed spawns. Since the off-tank is still affected by PYRETIC here, strategic use of immunities and cooldowns is key. More Photon and Whirlwind casts to heal through and laser swords to dodge. Depending on your array damage, another limit cut is possible here. The boss will become invulnerable and return to the center of the platform where he will spawn a plasma shield. This shield can only be destroyed from the front, and players will need to reposition accordingly. Once the shield is down, Cruise Chaser will cast Blasty Charge at a random player. Blasty will apply a heavy bleed debuff on players hit by the charge, and it's important that all players spread apart to avoid getting more than one bleed debuff. At around 45%, the boss will again cast Blast Off, and players will need to be ready to click the ducks to jump on his back. This time, when the platform is reformed, you'll notice it is smaller and now has 3 multi-field pillars on it. You'll notice under the objective list that each pillar has a specific amount of HP. These pillars can be destroyed by any damage done to them. If all 3 pillars are destroyed, the platform will fall and you will wipe. These also act as a bit of a soften rage, as incidental damage from boss attacks will chip away at the pillars and eventually you'll run out of health and die. This last phase relies heavily on proper mechanic dodging and minimizing damage to each pillar. First up, the boss will mark the off-tank with GA 100. This will do proximity-based damage, and the affected player will need to run to one end of the platform while everyone else goes to the other end. 2 more optical sights here. Players will need to be very careful not to hit pillars with Hawk and Super Hawk blasters while spreading out appropriately. Another Tank Buster, and you'll notice assault cannons spawn. Avoid their AoEs as necessary. Another Photon and Whirlwind combo to heal through before the boss casts Propeller Wind. This will confuse any player hit, and all players must line of sight behind a pillar to avoid this. Eventually, the boss will cast Limit Cut and mark up players 1 through 8 again. This is essentially the same as the original numbered Limit Cut, only players will need to be extra careful not to cleave any of the pillars. Handle each number pair and combo of attacks appropriately, and then return to the boss. Another Tank Buster into the next Ed spawn. Heal through Photon and Whirlwind casts and make sure you're dodging laser swords correctly. The next Limit Cut spawns his shield in front of him. Destroy the plasma shield and then spread appropriately for Blasty Charge. Be super careful not to spread in front of or near a pillar, as one hit of Blasty is sure to destroy it. At this point, you've essentially seen all the mechanics, and it's just a matter of handling each in turn. Keep an eye out on your pillar health to see how many more attacks you'll be able to survive. If you're having difficulty maintaining pillar health, it's often due to avoidable damage on them. With more practice and precise positioning, you'll notice the pillars surviving longer. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. If you'd prefer a more in-depth analysis of the fight, please be sure to check out the text guide linked in the description below. Up next, we'll head into the soul of the creator. As always, thanks for watching. Till next time.